Good morning and welcome to Middle Earth readings to those of you who are joining me live from the Mag and Rose Hearth Space, and for those of you who are connecting with me afterwards either on YouTube or via the blog. It is lovely to see you this morning. The question that we are exploring through the course of this session of Middle Earth readings is, who is writing your story? Odin has just, well, I say Odin's chariot, the equivalent being Mercury, has just taken his retreat, and he moved out of Largus, the rune of water, all the way back down into Manaz, the space of the sovereign self, and he came out of retreat, and he's just emerged back into Largus, the rune of water, the rune of this gateway between life and death. And when he comes and he emerges, he comes with like new ideas, new thoughts, new inspirations. And this is a perpetual theme for Odin in his life. On the blog article, for those of you who are seeing this in the blog or are connecting via the newsletter, this week's newsletter, I share the story of Odin meeting with the goddess Saga each morning and feeling into what is it that they talk about. What is it that they talk about? Saga, who is a seeress and a prophetess and a keeper of history and story and word, the keeper of all of the stories. And so Odin and Saga together are asking that story of us. Who is writing our stories? So morning to Suki, lovely to see you. Nipped in from the gardening. Well, that's very Largus, Suki. The rune Largus connects us with this with water, but also with life force. The leek, as in the vegetable, the leek. Here we go. Here's our Largus rune. Is associated with Largus, and it is this sort of plant-like life, vegetation, literally the life force coming up from the earth. So I love that. And you've got Feyu, which is also a beautiful life force rune, the rune at the beginning of the Elder Futhak. I always think about it as being like the power of photosynthesis, the life force coming down from the sun and bringing that life to the plants. So we've got a little bit of a partnership of Feyu and Largus going on for you, Suki, which is lovely. Suzanne, you have Wanyo. We are going to be working with Wanyo today for this, our lunar month. It's one of our deep dive runes today. We're going to be looking at 6 runes and looking at receiving from those runes. Esther, morning to you. You have got Dargas, which is also on our list for today, which is lovely. I always love it when people come along on there and their runes are in there. On its side, looking like a timer, and it's your North Node rune as well. Interesting. Okay, so we've got Dargas coming up, so I need to remember that you have got that one, Esther. Chen, you're working with Norths and Ansus, and I know we looked at Ansus last week, I think, for you, didn't we? So, it's real interplay between the speech and the body, always like returning to your embodied wisdom there for you, Chen. Lisa has Iwaz for your new Moon Lunar rune. That rhymes. Here we go. Here's Lisa's Iwaz rune. Iwaz is not on the slate for today. We'll have to sort of see when that one is coming. And Maggie has got Manaz. I think Manaz we did last time, I want to say, Maggie. So it's not on our slate, but we have got some of your runes that you, for those of you who are with me live. If you are joining me live and you come through during the course of the chat, please do pop in the chat what your rune is. Sometimes, even when we're not doing the 6 deep dive runes, you know, they do sort of niggle and they say, oh, there's a thing that needs to be shared in the moment. And if you're joining me for the recording, look, hashtag replay, so that I know that you are there, and share your runes. So before we start, I'm just going to invite you to take a moment. Let's center in our bodies just a little bit. And I've been feeling very strongly the need to bring more awareness to our energy body. For some of you, you might think about it as being your energy body. You might think about it as being your aura. Some people think of it as being the part of us that journeys. For a lot of people, when I describe it and they're like, I'm not sure what this is to start with, I have a little play with sensing where you feel your edges are. So take a moment now. Maybe you want to close your eyes for a minute. And for those of you who are already work with your energy body, you might want to start to just feel, where is it at the top? Where is it the sides? And how deep does it go down into the earth or into the floor? Because that's important, that we are anchored and grounded. And then I want you to imagine that there is a person. There's a friend. No, it's not a threatening person. There's a person, it's a friend there. Just come into the room with you. You can keep your eyes closed for this one. They just enter in, and they're just standing in front of you, and they stay like still. They're both still, and you're looking at each other, and there's a little bit of a smile. And then you feel them very gently. They're standing in front of you, and they start to move slowly towards you, and they're moving closer and closer and closer and closer. And you can feel them coming closer, and you will feel a moment where you go, oh, they're in my personal space. Oh, and you could say, please step out of my personal space at this point. No? And then step back, that's fine. And, you know, you can play with, and you can do this with a real person. It's really good fun to do it with a real person. I do it with my children sometimes, so they sort of feel, you know, when do you know? And they giggle when they feel that sort of tickling when you know that somebody's in your energy field. It's a really good way of just making it that practical, the sense of your energy field. Now, in the Northern tradition, this part of the self was often referred to as the hammer. That's the Norse, or the hide, Hyde. The hide, you can literally think about that in the terms of the modern term for like animal hides or animal skins comes directly from that. But it's not our physical bodies. It is deeply connected to our physical body. There is an absolute interplay between the two, but it is the energy body, often seen as being the part that then forms your, like a little journeying part of the self and travels off when you go through the different worlds. And the thing about the hammer or the energy body is that it is a part of our collaborative space. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown, very, very brief rundown of something that's a very deep subject, looking at Northern tradition soul lore. That you will know, for those of you who have visited my homepage or have done any work with me, you'll know that I talk about Uttan Guard and Innan Guard. So Uttan Guard is that which is other, that which is outside of the safe known space, Uttan Guard. And then Innan Guard is whatever you and the people around you, your tribe, we can think about it in different ways because it's a concept, it's not a place. Innan Guard is that which is mine, you know, my space. This is where I live, this is my tribe, this is who I'm comfortable with, this is who I know well, and everything else is Uttan Guard. Now, what the Northern peoples knew was that Uttan Guard, while seemingly a bit risky, don't know what's out there, was also the source of life and wisdom and power. And nobody got very far in life without travelling out into Uttan Guard. And you think about Odin doing his journey of retreat. Do you imagine Odin on his throne? He's looking out over all of the worlds. He's going and meeting Saga each day and finding wisdom and doing the thing and, you know, all of that. And then every now and then, and you'll see it in the myths and legends, he takes a deeper dive, let's say, and he travels inwards, both inwards and outwards at the same time, almost as if each of us has a space that is Uttan Guard but also ours, that wild place of the soul, that if we don't take that journey out into Uttan Guard, we lose that deep, wild part of ourselves. We become like tame and stagnant, stuck in Innan Guard. And so Odin has gone out on his retreat out into Uttan Guard to, you might think about it as recover or reclaim or reconnect, or perhaps find something new, you know, like he did with the runes. That's what he did. He went on a journey, an initiatory journey, and he found the runes and he brought them back, you know, and they are part of us, but he needed to go and find them and claim them in that sense. So you know, it can be a reclaiming, or it can be a claiming of something new that is unknown at that time. So he's doing that. And so we can think about that in terms of, you know, this is my space, this is my personal space, or I could think about it in terms of, you know, this is my house. I feel safe and comfortable in this house. I know who comes in, I know who goes out. This is my town. You are my people. It's all good. We're like Innan Guarding away. But we then have the space of Uttan Guard, which we need to journey into for new knowledge, meeting new people, going out into the place of dream, you know, going out into the wilds, and we find part of ourselves there, and we change and we transform and we evolve. That's what we do. But I want to add into the mix an important part which isn't in the literature, but when I think about solar and I think about us as managing our energy bodies, and but certainly in terms of the Northern European lore about the soul, I also think that there is a liminal space, that it's not a question of here I am in Innan Guard, hi, and then I travel out into Uttan Guard, and then I'm in Uttan Guard. There are spaces that are liminal spaces between those, and I think of those as being spaces of collaboration. So you remember I mentioned the hammer or the hide. So the hammer or the hide is your energy body, like I've said. And what's interesting about the energy body, and I love this in the Northern European tradition, and when I learned about it, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. They said the hammer and the hide is totally impacted by us, you know, by what we do, who we are, how we look after ourselves. Our channeling of, like for Suki, the Feu energy and the Lagu's energy will bring out that vibrancy. We can grow our haminya, our luck, you know, through working with our runes, through looking after ourselves. So we have a great deal of influence on our hammer, on our energy body. When we do any form of energetic work and we're moving up and down the energy body, we might be expanding it at the top or moving it down into the body. A lot of people who do a great deal of spiritual work but not a lot of practical work end up with a big, you know, bulbous energy body at the top and a tiny little piddling unrooted one at the bottom. No, so we have to work on our grounding. And when we feel disconnected and we go, oh, I'm really, really giddy right now, we have to ground and get back into the fullness of our energy bodies. But in the Northern European tradition, they also talked about the way in which other people influenced the hammer. And the example that, when they gave this example and they said, you know, you will have, particularly for people that you love or you know well, an image of them in your mind. No, and it might be influenced by the last time you saw them, but it's more likely that it's a composite image that was created at a particular point in their relationship with you, and it gets lodged in your mind. When you think of them, you think of this. Now I was like, oh, I don't really, I was like, oh, that makes sense theoretically, until I went to visit my dad. I was at university at the time, and I went to visit my whole family, and I saw my dad, and I was like, hello, you know, it's lovely to see you. You know, great, and we were all getting along fabulously. And I brought a friend with me from university, and she had only met my family once. And she came in, and she said hello to all of my family, and then she said to my dad, she was like, oh, hello, Roger. You've shaved off your moustache. And I kid you not, every member of my family went, oh, when did you do that? You know, including my mum. When did you do that? And he said, about 3 weeks ago. And none of us had noticed. And the reason we hadn't noticed is because we were seeing his hammer. No, it's not that we weren't connecting with his physical body was there, but we knew him so well that we were connecting with his hammer, and we're members of his family, and so we're in that collaborative space, you know, with him, shaping that image of him that we have, that we've all collectively held. And in his hammer still had a moustache. I'm telling you that for a fact. His hammer still had a moustache, and still sometimes now when I draw him, and it's the same with my mum, I draw him with a pair of little golden spectacles and a little moustache. Hasn't had it for years. But it was so strongly imprinted, and obviously for me as a child it was strongly imprinted because that's who I had grown up with. And so the hammer carries story within it. It carries story in the form of image, of emotion, of like physical experiences that we've had with somebody else, memories of touch. All of these things are held within the hammer. And so your hammer is your collaborative space. And our invitation through this week, in this waxing moon phase, we're moving towards the full moon, is to work with the runes that you are working with as collaborators. And that means that you are inviting them into this liminal space, out of Uttan Guard into a space where you're saying, yes, you know, guide me, but I'm not just looking for you to guide me in terms of I'm going to read your meanings, you know, which we can do, and that's fine. I can read your meanings. I'm going to invite you into my space to support me in my transformation, in my healing, in the next flourishing of my soul. Now, there are parts of us that are, what's the word I'm looking for? There are parts of the soul that are always existing in the collaborative space. So for those of you who will know that I talk about the Perth Circle, for example, our circle of like divine, feminine ancestors, guides, guardians, and to a certain extent they are always in our liminal space. They're always there supporting us, looking after us. Our ancestral circle might be in there as well. So this is really interesting when we start to get to this liminal space of the self. So your rune that you're working with, you can say, I'd like you to come in as a collaborator to support me. Now, before we go into the deep dive runes, what I'd like to mention at this point is that this is one of the things I think that's really challenging for those of us who are energetically aware, have worked strongly with healing practices, or perhaps are highly sensitive, so naturally are aware of energies, is getting good at working out whether you have invited somebody else's energy, or the energy of a space, or the energy of a deity, or anything like that, whether you have invited them into your collaborative space, or whether this is like, intrusion is a strong word, but people and places are broadcasting all of the time. They're broadcasting all of the time. And highly sensitive people and people who work with energy a lot are always in that zone. They're always in that liminal zone to a certain extent. So through the course of this week, this is also a really good time with Odin's chariot, coming out, emerging out of Lagus, setting new intentions through this time, and some of the other planetary movements that those of you who are Sooner Star will know about. It is this time of saying, what do I want to invite in, and what do I want to say no to? Sue's saying, where the energies are almost bleeding into your energy space. Yes, that's a good way of describing it. There are things like that we invite into our bodies, aren't there? Don't worry, that's my husband behind me. Don't worry, it's not an intruder. It's not an incursion. Anybody? It is my husband. We can choose what we eat. We can choose what we wear. All of my clothes I'm inviting into my, this is my zone of collaboration with the outside world. What I wear. But there are also things that we can't control. We can't control the air, or the water that we're drinking, or somebody who's having a really hard time who just happens to be in this space. Let me just close the window, because otherwise you're going to be distracted. Hold on. There we go. A little bit of a dark, there you go. But otherwise, we're managing our space there. I've gone really dark now. Let's see if we can get a light. Better? Now I look as if it's the middle of the night, but there you go, that's fine. So we can manage those spaces. I didn't cue him up to do that, by the way. We can manage those spaces and say, this is what I want into my space, this is what I do not want in my space. And that art of learning how to do that, and how to work with the hammer and say, who are my collaborators and who do I not wish to be my collaborators, is such an important part for those of us who are working as spiritual and energetic beings in the world. Now, obviously, everyone is a spiritual and energetic being, but some of us are aware of that, and we're working with that actively in the moment. So this sense of who am I inviting into my zone of collaboration is incredibly important. And as obviously we work with the runes, we are inviting them in to be our collaborators and to come and be with us in our spaces. So let's have a look. So I've talked a little bit about the Lagus rune. So this rune for me, really, because Odin's chariot is in Lagus at the moment, Ud's chariot is also in Lagus, so there's a deeper energy, sort of karmic energy. It's really holding this strong intention of healing with Ud's chariot. The Lagus rune is very present, and it's very much asking. So if you have Lagus as your rune for them at the moment that you're working with, that sense of saying, what do I invite into my body, into my mind, so ideas that are coming through, what am I reading, what am I watching on the television, who am I speaking to, and also the spirit, what's happening in my dream space, what's happening when I journey, am I choosing to take those things on board or not? Incredibly important for the Lagus rune. And the Lagus rune is wonderful for opening those gateways, and for, what's the word I'm looking for, being in that space of the liminal. It's Lagus. You've got to argue that the word liminal with the L at the beginning, and it's inherently a Lagus word, is also a rune that helps us to open those boundaries, but it can also help us to protect. It's not like one of the protector runes like Algiz or Suelo, perhaps. It doesn't form as a shield necessarily. It's a cleansing rune, so it will help you if you do feel as if, God, I have had a lot of incursions, a lot of stuff in my space that doesn't feel like it's mine or me, or I am not choosing to have it writing my story. you can use the Largus rune to cleanse and clear during this time. There is an article in my Largus rune page. If you look up Megan Rose and look up Largus in the search button, you'll find the Largus rune page, and there's the meditations there, as there are for all of the runes. You can do meditations, and most of them, not all of them, but most of them have an article as well that you can explore. So have a little play with your Largus rune. Now the next rune that wanted to come up is Rado. So as I mentioned in the blog, Saga and Odin were the keepers of the wisdom for this week, and Rado is one of Saga's runes. So Saga is this rune of deity of the written word and the spoken word, and that interplay between like poetry and like fact-based history, I want to say. She sort of says, yes, there is the recording, sort of dry recording of events, but there is also the poetry, there is also the passion underneath that. So finding those things. With the Rado rune, it's this rune of journey and movement and rhythm. So the Rado rune will be inviting you into looking at what are the rituals that I use to tell myself who I am, to set my energy for the day. What habits do I use? What do I do when I'm sort of feeling really disconnected? Do I then untether myself further off into some other realm? No, Netflix being my one of choice there, let's be honest. Or do I go to places where I reconnect? For me, walking is an incredibly powerful form of reconnection to who I am. It's my first thread rune. So the first thread and your lunar rune, and I think somebody mentioned their lunar. Sue said your lunar month is Easter, didn't you? So apologies, Sue. But yeah, if you know your birth runes and you're thinking about that energy management, that space of energy management, your first thread rune, which is your earth rune, or your ascendant is what it would be, and if you know the zodiac. That's how it's calculated. And your lunar rune, which is that partnership, receiving, working with others, are the two runes to work with around that collaborative space and supporting effective collaboration in the space. And so Rado is a rune that's very powerful for me at the moment. It's not my rune that I'm working with through this lunar cycle, but it is a rune that will come in and be a helper rune for me through the course of this week, working with my collaboration space, my liminal space. So what are those rituals? What are those habits? Are there ways in which you can increase them? For those of you who did Illuminate with me, the Illuminate retreat, you have your needs creed, where we looked at, what are my needs? How am I defining what they are and meeting those every day? What are the sacred rituals that I bring into my life? So Rhoda's really asking about sacred ritual, and also about places, places that you go to where you reconnect. Why do you choose them? What do they tell you about you and that authorship of the self? Now the next rune that wanted to come and play with us this week is the Perth rune, which is really interesting because the Perth rune, here we go, here's our Perth rune, rune of weird, the rune of laughter, the karma. It's very much like a karmic rune. It's the rune of the fates very much as well. There is a sensuality and a play to the Perth rune, and very much a sense of being fully present in the moment. And what often comes through with the Perth rune is surrender, which is interesting. When I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about the idea of what or who do I invite into my collaboration space versus what feels like intrusion. So I think that what the Perth rune wants us to have is that very strong distinction between surrendering to anything and surrendering to what we have chosen. The idea of being power or being powerful is the idea of surrendering fully to yourself, surrendering to your soul, surrendering to your vision for the world, surrendering to your true desires. And again, you'll need to come on the Illuminate retreat to look at more at true desires. All of these things come through with the Perth rune. So what the Perth rune is asking about is it's partially asking about that sense of how can I more fully surrender to myself, to what I know is good for my soul, to what I know my soul is desiring for. It also asks about, just to have a little look back over initiatory moments, rites of passage that you have entered into. And in this day and age, when we don't have that many rites of passage in our society, it is inviting you into a space of saying, I am the designer of those rites of passage. We might talk about in work that I do with one of many, the organisation that I'm a trainer with, we talk about like spiritual matriarchy. We talk about spiritual matriarchy because it's a women's leadership organisation, but you could talk about spiritual patriarchy, or perhaps spiritual sovereignty might be a way of looking at this. To say that, when the rites of passage aren't there for me, or when those rituals aren't there for me, that I know I need, part of the role of this generation is to create those rituals so that they are available for future generations, but also to recognise that even if you are somebody who lives in a culture where there are beautiful, empowering, initiatory experiences, there is still a role for us to redesign and create and nuance them. It's that place of stepping from being the initiated into being the initiator. So, example for me would be, for those of you who work with me in Circle will know that we often do the symbol rite. Now, I do the symbol rite with my children. We get our drinking horn out, or sometimes we just use the glasses, that's fine. And we do the symbol rite. We do a little boast, we do a little toast, and we do an oath, like a promise that we want to make for the day or the week ahead. And this is a really powerful rite. It's fun, we enjoy it, but it's something that I want to bring in for my family. It's not something that is common in our society. I know there's lots of fabulous people from heathen groups in the group now, so obviously it's more common in this space than in most. But what are the rites of passage that you would be creating for yourself? What are the rituals that you would be creating for your tribe? Is what the Perth rune asks us. And Michelle, you said, I found setting energetic boundaries very hard to do. Some of this work in certain situations, but not always. And this is about, again, with the Perth rune, it is about experimentation. One of the things that one of the sort of, let's say, like initiations that I experienced when I was working with the runes is that I had learned about how to create a circle, why can't I speak today? Like an energetic circle to contain energy using the runes, all of the runes in the circle. And then I was creating a circle for an in-person shamanic circle that I was running with my beautiful friend Kay Gillard at the time in Greenwich. And I was like, oh, the container that wants to be created for this space, and I just saw it really vividly. I was doing sort of preparatory work for it, working with the Norns. It wasn't the rune circle, it was the Perth rune. Now the Perth rune is normally, I've got that right way around, normally on its side, but it was this way up, like a container, and I saw it with everybody inside, and we created a 3-dimensional Perth row container, and I use that so much now in my work, and I find it incredibly powerful because it is both a container, but it also holds that energy of surrender to the chosen energies that you've decided to work with at that moment in time. So it's a beautiful, discerning boundary setter. So just like you said, Michelle, keep working on it, keep practicing, keep that spirit of sacred play, as I like to call it, where we are playful, but in a deeply connected, inquiring, reverent way. That curiosity and that reverence piece. So that's our Perth rune. Then we have the next rune that came along was the Wanyo rune, which has a little bit, there is some Perth energy in all of the runes. They sort of speak to each other, they whisper to each other, and I could hear Wanyo and Perth whispering to each other as they were preparing to work with us through the course of this week. So Wanyo is the rune of joy and of ecstasy and of belonging. It's a really interesting rune to work with. Here we go, there's the Wanyo rune. When thinking about the soul, and thinking about Uttan Guard and Uttan Guard, because Perth comes at the end of the first family of runes, so the first 8 of the runes. It comes at the end, and it is a rune of fulfillment. It's almost like, I've taken the journey through that first 8, and it's that moment of, I know that I belong. you know. I really feel that sense of belonging and safety and comfort and security with my family. So it embodies that, but it's also the person like out on the hillside being buffeted by the wind, and they're feeling like, oh, you know, I'm at one with nature and I'm expanding and I don't know what's coming and I'm alive in the moment, and the wind of Odin is raging around me and I'm finding and claiming my power and my wildness and recognizing that I am part of Uttan Guard as well. You know, comes through the Wanyo rune too. It holds both of those within it. So the Wanyo rune is really asking for you to think about connection, and to think about connection as being a life force energy. So again, in the story that I'm going to share in the blog and on the newsletter when it comes out about Saga and Odin, this witnessing journey, I like to call them, which is when we go and we look at a sacred story and we witness it, and then new things come through, is what happens with this story. There is a selectivity that takes place. There is a releasing of some aspects of story so that others can come through more powerfully. And the Wanyo rune does that, and it says some of the things that you do are existing perhaps in the realm of rado a little bit. You're repeating them, you know, one after the other after the other. I've just done this so many times that there is a comfort there, and we can get stuck in that place. We can get stuck in Uttan Guard, just traveling the same route over and over and over again. And Wanyo says there's more, and what next? And what would be even better than this? And what would be even better than this? So it says, absolutely, if you are getting soul sustenance and joy from this experience, then own it and do it and be in it. But if it was the case that you 10 years ago experienced that, and you 10 years hence, you have been in and out of that liminal zone so many times now, you have taken so many journeys into Uttan Guard and returned, you are not the same person that you were. What do you need now? What brings you that joy now is what the Wanyo rune is asking you to feel into. It's really this, imagine this energy of light. You know, if you close your eyes and just imagine I'm looking at my garden now. My husband's still moving backwards and forwards, by the way. I'm just looking out at my garden now. I'm looking at the flowers that we've planted there. And if I close my eyes, I can still feel their hides or their hammers, like their energy bodies playing and like whispering to me. I've made it one of my part of my mission for myself this year is to do a lot more gardening. You know, I get so much pleasure and joy from gardening. I was like, yes, if I would have been my Wanyo space, that is what I need. Lisa, you're saying Wanyo is your moon birth rune. Oh, that's wonderful. And really interesting, you know, we were talking about then that also becomes that point of connection for you between the world, you know, other people receiving the world. Wanyo, like following that that desire and that place of life force, becomes incredibly important for you as your lunar rune through which you transmit your joy. I've heard your joy, Lisa, you know, and I've heard your wild voice as well, out into the world and then receive it back in. Wanyo holds that energy for you. So thank you for sharing that. Let me see, I'm just having a little bit to make sure that I'm not missing comments as they come down. Oh, okay. So the next rune, we're on our penultimate rune now that wanted to come out and play, was the Dargas rune, which is hiding from me. Here we go. The Dargas rune. Who was it that had Dargas? I know it was Dargas. I remember you said that it was on its side, didn't you? Who was it that said that? Esther. It was you, Esther. Lunar month on its side. So for Esther, her Dargas rune was like that rather than like this, which can bring some real nuances. So we might see what comes through with your on its side Dargas rune in a moment, Esther. So Dargas is the rune of the day. Like the word day literally comes from Dargas. But you'll notice that it's got this this shape here, which is the balance really of day and night. It's not just the light. The Dargas rune encompasses the light and the darkness, and it then sort of comes down into this point in the center where time merges. Why can't I do that probably? Time merges in the very center, everything becomes unified. And it is this really deep, like, transformational rune where we go from being oh gosh, I'm in the liminal space, I've been here for a while, it's all a bit tough, are my collaborators, did I invite them in? I'm not even sure if I invited them in anymore. Did I invite them, or are they intruders in my space? You don't know. And sometimes fate comes along and it feels like an intrusion. For all the best that we're saying, I invite in the best ever things for me in my life. And then something comes along and you go, really? Is that the best thing for me? Sure. Those sorts of things can happen. And then one day we just wake up, or, something happens and we go, oh, now I get it. Sometimes years later. That feeling when you've just been waiting for years and suddenly it makes sense and you think, I really would have been great if you'd made that clear to me 8 years ago, because that was really tough. But Dargas is that moment of realization and clarity in that time. So Dargas asks you to perhaps do a little bit of a retrospective. Again, maybe useful to look at the tale of Saga and Odin in the newsletter or blog when they come out, which I'm hoping will be this afternoon. What part has unexpected events, like things that you weren't ready for, or they came totally out of the blue, what part have they played in your life and as authors of your life in that moment? And the more we stand in our power, the more we're able to claim our power, the more we've been working on that journey of soul healing and reclamation, the more we look back on those moments and we go, okay, so there were some that were like brilliant, yes, that was amazing. And if that hadn't happened, I can't believe what my life might have been like. I don't know, And there are some that you look back and go, that was really tough. I would have liked it if I'd chosen, a slightly easier fate for myself. And there are some things where you go, I just didn't choose that. I didn't choose it. But Dargas helps us to resolve those things. So we look back and we can make sense. Our ability to create meaning, to rewrite our stories, even when there are parts of them that we would not have chosen for ourselves. Our power comes from our ability to take those events and make them into a meaning that is empowering for us. And that can take a very long time to do. But when that moment comes, we step through the Dargas rune and we look back and we see, I passed through one gateway in my life and I journeyed through it, and then I passed out the other side as a different person, and what we hope we are supporting each other in doing. If you are blessed enough to be invited into somebody else's collaborative space, to be someone who gets to influence their hide or their hammer, we hope that we leave them in that place of power, that we at some point will be someone who supported that Dargas moment. We were talking about the Perth rune and sort of initiations and creating initiations. These are ones that come up serendipitously, and we use them or turn them into initiations. And we help others to do the same with our Dargas rune. And then finally, our last rune that wanted to come out and have an explore with for this week is the Kinaz rune. So Kinaz is the rune of creativity. It is, here we go, it's our Kinaz rune. It's the rune of, so words like knowledge with a K at the beginning, creativity, cunning, cleverness, they come from this Kinaz rune, the keenness of the mind matched with the creativity of the hands and the soul. It is a rune of, it's transformation in a different way to Dargas. So Dargas is when we sort of find ourselves, and we might look the same on the outside, but we have fundamentally changed on the inside. Our Uttan Guard realm is no longer the same, But the Kinaz rune is often associated with physical transformation. It's quite grounded and embedded in the current reality, in the cleverness of the hands and the ability to shape. It is the forge, the blacksmith and the forge, all come through from this place. And so the Kinaz rune asks you to look at the objects that you have chosen to surround yourself with, to view them as collaborators, as part of that sort of liminal space. I'm somebody, I don't know if it's because I'm highly sensitive. It might be because I have dyspraxia, so I need my environment to be a certain way. I am profoundly impacted by my space, you know? And I've realised that in order to collaborate, if I want my space to support me and collaborate with me, I have to collaborate with it. You know, there are some places that I can go to and they're wonderful, and I can walk through the forests, or go in somewhere where they're playing beautiful music and there's water, and those are lovely and they soothe my soul. But I need to create those spaces around me as well. That's important. I have to use my own creativity. I have to choose, like, what books am I going to have in my space? What pictures am I going to have on the wall? All of these things come from Kinaz. That sense of working with our spaces as collaborators, and in particular, it generates this energy of collaboration, which can be, I had ideas about what I wanted and I brought those in, but also about creativity, about what you have made, because then you've put your own energy into the space. And I can see, Suzanne, there you're talking about Kinaz being your first thread rune. It's a beautiful example here. So I mentioned that we have the Mani's chariot rune, your lunar birth rune. We talked about that with Lisa a little bit, being Wanyo, and the way in which the Wanyo rune becomes like the channel for the energy. So your first thread rune is your sort of external self, which is why it's very attached to the hammer or the hide, because people often meet that energy first. You've got your sun rune, which is your like space of deep Uttan Guard, and it takes you down when you go out into Uttan Guard. It helps you to kind of connect to the right things for you because it resonates with your essence. But your first thread rune is like your own natural boundary protector. Michelle, you were talking about having energetic boundaries there. So for those of you who struggle with those energetic boundaries, your first thread rune is an incredibly important rune. This is why for me mine is Rado. So when I go out and I walk and I consciously shed stuff that's not mine, I find that incredibly helpful and powerful. Suzanne is a creatrix par excellence. Literally, Suzanne has posted this morning in the Birth Runes Soul Journey group the most stunning piece of artwork. And most of you will have seen the altars that she's posted and things like that. When Suzanne brings that part of herself to us, we get to experience her saying, this is who I am. First thread, this is who I am. This is me standing in the power of my hammer or my hide, and projecting that out into the world and inviting you to come in and be in my collaborative space and know who I am. Doesn't mean that she is offering her deep essence sun rune. She could choose to do that if she wanted to, but that might be with a more sort of intimate group of people, or it might be in like magical or sacred space. But the first thread rune is one that you can open your hand out and shake hands with somebody new, and they get to meet you on your own terms. That's why our first thread runes are so important. Sue is saying, Wanyo is my first thread rune. So you are bringing joy to the world there, Sue. I love that. Michelle, you've got Gibo, the real beautiful, balanced energy, that understanding of promises and oaths, the importance of reciprocity and gift giving. It's a real person who is able to weave social bonds with the Gibo rune. It's incredibly important. Sue, you've also got Wanyo as your first thread. So it's a real, you said it twice. I was looking at that and going, oh, there's two Sues. No, one Sue, Wanyo, bringing that beautiful Wanyo energy. So we can work with the rune that you have selected for your week. It's beautiful, really powerful, but you can also work with your birth runes as well as personal connectors into the theme of the week. So that is where we are with our runes for the week ahead, with working with this idea of who is writing your story, taking a bit of charge of that story with the rune that you've got, so you can invite that the rune that you're working with to come in and be a guide for you. We've talked a little bit about our birth runes as well, which I wasn't expecting. That was fun to be able to do that. Really bring us into a place of power where we are flowing with life and reclaiming ourselves and standing in power all of the time. Esther, you've got Ewaz as your first thread, and Perth in Odin's chariot. Lovely. Yeah, we've talked about the Perth rune, haven't we? So that beautiful energy there, and the Elwaz rune of that's whereas with the Giva rune, I always think about it as being codified partnerships. That's why Michelle has got this sense of being able to say, okay, who needs what? Who do I connect with what? Elwaz is the like energetic equivalent, of looking at looking inside. People with Elwaz runes are often able to penetrate those first thread boundaries quite quickly and see the essence of another person, because they're naturally just offer a harmonic resonance with other people very, very quickly. So deep conversations come easily for Elwaz in first thread, as does taking people on spirit journeys, all of that type of work. Connecting people who are in Uttan Guard with Uttan Guard comes naturally to people with Elwaz in their first thread. That doesn't surprise me at all, Esther, that is your first thread rune. Blessings to you all. I look forward to seeing you. We will be posting shortly in the group. I've got my interview with Rhiannon Aiken coming up. I know that next week there is the Rune Magics workshop, which is filling up incredibly fast. Very excited for those of you who are planning to attend that. I am looking to put on at least one more workshop in the coming month. I did a piece on the Hero Within at Hexham Congress, which was lovely this weekend, and I know that quite a few people said that they were interested, so I'm thinking about putting that on again. So look out for those opportunities. I look forward to seeing those of you who are in the inner circle at our Hearth Hygge connection session on Friday. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful week ahead.